During the cooler months, I love to light some candles and curl up on the couch with some handwork. In this video, I'm so excited to share how you can easily knit a Sophie style scarf, cozy wrist warmers, and what I do with a cashmere sweater that has some moth holes in it. So for this video, and you can see my hand warmers here, I'm going to assume that you do have an idea of how to knit. If you don't, I do have a video in which I am teaching you very basic knitting and crochet stitches, but you know, obviously you can make your hand warmers, wrist warmers crocheting, but I'm going to show you how you can knit those. And what you'll need to do too is you need to get your yarn and your needles and probably do a little test square to figure out how wide and how tall your knitting is. And from there, extrapolate, doing a little bit of math, how wide you need your wrist warmers to be. And there's two ways that you can actually knit your wrist warmers. And one is to basically knit a square and then sew it along on the sides, or as I have done with these, knit it in the round, which I personally like a little bit better because then you don't have a seam. But that's a little bit more technical, but I'm going to show you that anyways because it is a little easier to actually just knit a either rectangle or a square and then sew it together on one side. So what I would encourage you to do is figure out what kind of pattern you want. I have a bit of a rib knit here. You can absolutely make that a very flat knit and doing, let's say, right stitches on one row and then purling on the way back so it looks like it's all knitted in the front. You can also do just knitting right stitches and then it gets a little bit ribbed the other way, but you can just decide what you want to do and then knit a little bit, measure probably just right around here how wide your little swatch is, and then from there extrapolate how wide you need your wrist warmer to be, and then you can figure out how many stitches you need to cast on, which is what I'm going to show you now. This is my yarn. My needles are probably a little wider than what they suggest here on the yarn, but I'm gonna actually cast on 36 stitches because I want my pattern to be, instead of 2 and 2, which is a repeat of 4, I want it to be 3 and 3, so that's a repeat of 6, and 36 is actually 6 times 6, so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to cast on 36 stitches right here. There are different ways to cast on stitches, but this is how I like to do it. I like to create a loop this way and then turn over my fingers just like so. Again, I have my loop here, put my fingers in there, spread my fingers, and then turn around. And then I'm going to go in here with 2 needles, grab this one and pull it through. And then I get this loop. And that's how I'm going to cast on 36 stitches. Now I have my 36 stitches here. It's always a good idea to count them again. And I will do that really quick. They're kind of spread out. 34, 36. So I have 36 stitches. And then I can remove one of the needles here. And now I'm going to start knitting the first row with 3 purl and 3 knit. And I do knit in the German way, which is holding the needles in both hands and never putting one down. Three knit, and then 2, 3 purl. I'm going to finish this row here, and then I need to distribute my stitches over 4 needles so that I have a round. Okay, so now is the point where I'm gonna divvy this up over 4 needles. So now what I need to do is I need to make sure that these are all lying flat, and I'm just going to continuously knit. I'm not going to go back and forth. Here's my tail. And I have to make sure that nothing is twisted here. So here it is. Here's my round. And now I'm going to just start knitting 3 purl and 3 knit. And here you can see that I have already knitted some of this, and I'm just going to continue going in the rounds and just knitting the stitches the way they come and present themselves. So here's, actually these are pearls, so I need to get my yarn in front. And I always like to knit the first stitch on the new needle a little tighter, because oftentimes you have a little bit of a loose stitch when you start a new needle. Now I have my desired length, and because I have this big rib here, it's actually gonna shorten a little bit when I stretch it and put it over my wrist, but you can make this as long or as short as you like, but I like to have my thumb here so you can see how far this goes over my wrist. And now I have been going in rounds here knitting. Now what I'm gonna do is I am going back and forth. This will create a hole here, a vertical hole. So basically it's just more like a slit than a hole. And I'm gonna do that and create the thumb hole for that. So now I'm gonna go back instead of forward in rounds, and that will create this opening that I'm looking for. Okay, I'm gonna get the first stitch. I always just slip, and then I'm gonna do a couple of purls, and then I'll just continue on. Now I have my thumb hole here, and you can make it as big or as small as you want. I like to measure about 4 to 5 centimeters, which is not quite 2 inches. You can see that I'm missing a little bit, but the next row is actually gonna be knit. So now I'm gonna go in the rounds again, and then I'm gonna add about this much to finish my wrist warmer. And here is where I'm knitting in the round, connecting the 2 needles versus going back and forth as before to close my thumb hole. So here I'm knitting again in rounds, and you can see that there's this opening here. You can also see it from this side, the dark wool, and that's going to be for my thumb. So here's my thumb hole, and I'm going to show you how I fit it, because I can give you measurements, but ultimately I think it's more important that you enjoy the wrist warmer and make it fit for your hand. So if I pull it over my hand, you can see how the thumb fits right in here, and it's actually covering my knuckles, which is exactly what I wanted. If you like it better in front of your knuckles, not covering your knuckles, you could have finished it earlier, but I'm gonna actually do this now. And the last row I'm gonna knit now is I'm gonna knit it and then actually finish up with the stitches and close it up. So I'm gonna show that to you now. So that's gonna be one more row that I knit. And then I'm gonna cast off. The way I do that is I knit, pull it off, make it a little bit bigger because you want it loose, you don't want it too tight. And then I knit the next one, and then I pull the first one over the second one. So I have one here, and then I have this small loop right here. You do that with the next one too. Knit and slip that over this one. And now it's going to be a purl, so I purl it and pull this one over that one. This is what it looks like now. Hope you can see it in this light. Okay, so here I have my last two, and this one is a purl, so I'll purl it and pull this over. And this is my last one. I'm gonna pull this out a little bit so I have enough to actually finish it up and clean it up. So I'm pull it tight. And then I'm gonna take a darning needle and pull this in here to make it look all nice, but this is the finished wrist warmer. And I'll do the second one and show you what they're done when they're done, both of them. Here they are, and you'll be amazed at what a difference they make in a cold house on a cool morning, keeping you warm. I love knitting in the evenings, and many of you have asked me how I knit this scarf. It is also called the Sophie scarf, and this is really cute. It's actually surprisingly easy to knit, and I want to show you how you can do that. This is my yarn that I got in Germany, but some of the things are pretty universal, and here it says the needle size and your swatch, your test square, and what you can make with it and what it is. But it doesn't really matter all that much because you can use whatever yarn you have, and if it's thicker, your scarf will be a little bit bigger, and if it's thinner, like this one, then obviously you're gonna get a thinner scarf. And I will take these off and then show you how to get started. Here I have 2 needles, that's essential. And I also like to use a row counter because that's essential. If you're really old school, you can always take a piece of paper and put little, I don't know, like numbers on a piece of paper, but this is actually really helpful. I'm going to show you in a moment what I do with it and how I count my rows. We'll start by casting on 6 stitches. So it looks like this. And then I go in here and grab my first stitch, my second one, pull it tight, third, 4, 5, and 6. So obviously you have your tail here, and you want to make sure that you're not knitting with your tail. And I always like to cast on with 2 needles. Now I'm going to remove one, and what I will also do is put my row counter on my needle, and to prevent it from falling off, I have this little stopper here. So this is always sitting back here. Now I knit the continental way. I hope that you can bear with me. So we have 6 stitches. This is the beginning of the scarf, and we knit the first 3. 1, 2, and 3. So we have 3 knit stitches here, and then we have 3 more on the second needle. We'll bring the yarn in front as if you wanted to purl, and just slip these off. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. You have 3 knit, and then you just slip these and the yarn here in front of these 3. Now we'll turn it around, and I'm counting my, so this is row number 1. So now I take my yarn and knit the first one. You want to pull it tight a little bit. I'm going to show you again. You have your yarn back here. 3, and then we do the same thing again. We bring the yarn in front, 1, 2, 3, slip. So this is what it looks like. And on your row counter, you want to turn it to 2. And then we'll repeat this. Now I have knitted 7 rows and I'm on my 8th row, and this is where we increase. And we start again. Knit 1, 2, and on the 3rd stitch we go in as if we knit, and then we go around the back and knit 1 more. I'm going to go back out and show you one more time. So we go in through here, knit, we don't pull the stitch off, and then we go into the back here, grab the yarn. So we have 2 stitches instead of just 1. And then we continue, and this is how we do the increase. And you can see how this is the I-cording here. So now I'm on my row number 1. And now I have 3, and I'm going to knit 1 more 4. And 1, 2, 3. And it's really important that you always increase on the same side. For me, this is where I have this. However, I have a visitor here. You can also use a stitch marker. Let me see where my stitch marker is. You can put a stitch marker right here so you know that this is the side that you're doing increases on. And now we just repeat this pattern. You always repeat this, knit 3 or however more, and then the last 3 you bring the yarn in front and slip them, and on the 8th row you do an increase until you have the desired width. I like my Sophie scarf to be about 40 inches long, and I have knitted about 20 inches here, but you know, you can totally make this as long or short as you want. Remember that you can also stretch the scarf quite a bit because of this ribbing pattern, so it is very stretchable. You can pull it all the way you want. I have been increasing on this side where I have my stitch marker, and now that I'm at the halfway point, I will start decreasing, and I'm decreasing on the same side that I have been increasing. That's really important to remember, because then it will be sort of like a really drawn out triangle. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how I decrease. I have my 3 stitches here that I slipped, and I will knit 1, 2, and the next one I'm just slipping. I am knitting the next one, and then I will slide the slipped one over, and that's how I will decrease every 8 rows, and then I will get the same sort of slanted back that I got for the increase. And then I'm just gonna continue knitting until I get to the end of my row. And again, here's my little decrease. While I'm still knitting and finishing up my Sophie scarf here, I've started the decreasing. I just briefly wanted to show you how you can bind off, and I've just knitted this little piece right here just to show you. So what you'll do is you start with the first one as you knit, and you want to keep it somewhat tight, and then you knit the next one and pull this over the first one. So that's the first bind off, and then the second one binding off, and now you have 3. They look like pearls, so we will purl them. And this one, and the last one. One more time through here, and then you pull it tight and pull this all the way out, and then you're gonna have to weave it in. And I know this looks a little bit loose here, but that's just how it is. And then you can loop this around a few times and pull the stitch in, and that is your edge. And I will show you on my finished Sophie scarf what that looks like. So this is the side that I started with, and here, I mean, this looks a little bit, like I said, you're gonna have to pull this in just a little bit, but that's the finished edge for the Sophie scarf. For my last project, my cashmere sweater, I like to use my husband's late grandmother's knitting kit in this beautiful wooden box. I don't know what it's really called. And I actually have a few of her items in there. This is the sweater. It's too good to throw it out, and I'd love to get some more life out of it. Here is one area that I have already fixed. You can't see it a little bit, but here are the moth holes that I'm gonna fix and mend now. Again, you can see it just a little bit, but once you wear it, it's not that obvious. This is the closest color that I could find. It shows up better in the video than it was in real life, but it's not supposed to actually show at all, but just sort of be in between your knitting. I'm gonna put that into my needle here, and that's something where I always need glasses. I don't know about you, but those tiny holes and tiny needles and tiny thread. So I'm gonna just go in there, and this is very loose, and I'm gonna keep the tail of the thread there, and then I'm gonna go perpendicular to the knitting, because I want to do two things. I want to prevent the hole from getting any bigger, but I also want to pull it tight so it's not as visible. And then I'm gonna go into a side by side, back and forth motion, and really what I'm looking for is trying to go in between the knitting stitches, if you imagine that, rather than weaving or coming all the way up with the thread. And again, it's going to pull just a little bit, but it's not going to be, once you wear it, it's not going to be so obvious. And I just hate to throw things out. I always like to see how I can get some more life out of really nice items. And this is pretty much a whole nice quality sweater. It's just, yeah, it just had some moth holes in it. On the back side, I make a little knot into my thread here, cut that off, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like on the front. And I have to say I'm really happy with it because yes, as I pull it here like this, you can see it, but when you wear it, it's not that visible at all. I hope you enjoyed coming along for my little projects, and thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have questions down in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.